I was sitting at the kitchen table in our modest house on a quiet street in Kansas City, the kind of neighborhood where people still wave from their porches and kids ride bikes until the streetlights come on. My laptop was open in front of me, a half-finished proposal for a new client project glowing on the screen. I had been working on it for weeks, and for once I felt a small, steady sense of pride in what I had built. Then my phone lit up with a notification that changed everything. It was a long text thread from my aunt. She had meant to send it to someone else. The preview showed my mother's name at the top, and before I could stop myself, I tapped it open. The messages went back several days. My mother had written, "Amanda is acting like this little side thing she started is some big accomplishment. It's cute, but let's not pretend it's changing her life or ours. She's always been good at making things sound bigger than they are." My aunt had replied with laughing emojis and added, "Exactly, remember when she tried to tell everyone about that award at work last year?" Half the family rolled their eyes. "She just wants attention." There were more. They went on about how I put on airs now that I had a little extra money coming in, how I thought I was better than the rest of the family, how it was probably better not to make a big deal out of anything I did so I wouldn't get too full of myself. I read it twice. Then a third time, my hands stayed flat on the table, but something inside me went very still and very cold. It was not the first time I had felt this particular ache. It was just the first time I had the proof sitting in my palm, written in their own words, never meant for me to see. If you have ever smiled through a family dinner while knowing the people across the table were quietly rewriting your life into something smaller and sillier the moment your back was turned, you will understand the exact flavor of bitterness that settled in my chest. It tasted like every careful compliment they had given me over the years that turned out to be just another way to keep me in my place. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I simply closed the thread, set the phone face down, and stared out the window at the tidy front yard Jason and I had spent the spring fixing up. We had chosen this neighborhood because it felt steady, safe. The kind of place where you could build something without someone immediately trying to explain why it did not really count. A short, sharp thought cut through the quiet. They had been doing this for years. Every promotion, every client I landed, every time I hosted or helped or showed up with a check when things were tight for someone else. They smiled, they hugged me, and then they made sure everyone else heard the version where I was just lucky or pushy or making it all up for attention. And I had kept trying anyway, kept hosting the visits, kept offering the help, kept thinking that if I just gave enough, the story they told about me would eventually change. It never had, and now I had the receipts. The next afternoon, my mother and my aunt arrived for the visit we had planned weeks earlier. They called it a family trip, a chance to spend time together in the city, see the sights, maybe do a little shopping. I had cleaned the guest room, stocked the fridge with the things my mother liked, and told myself it would be fine. I was good at telling myself that. Jason met them at the door with his easy smile and took their bags. I stood a little behind him, watching the way my mother's eyes moved over the house, like she was checking to see if I had finally made it or if it was still just cute. My aunt gave me a quick hug that felt a fraction too tight. "Everything looks so nice, honey," my mother said, stepping inside and setting her purse on the entry table. "You've done a lot with this little place. It's sweet." The word little landed exactly where she intended it. I felt the familiar, sarcastic twist in my chest. Sweet, like something you say about a child's drawing. You do not want to hang on the fridge. My aunt glanced at the framed photo on the wall from the community project I had helped lead last year. "Is that the thing you were telling us about?" It turned out okay. Then I kept my voice even. It went really well. The school district is expanding the program because of it. My mother made a soft sound that could have been approval or dismissal. "That's nice. You always did like working with kids. Keeps you busy, busy. Not successful, not proud, busy." I watched her walk into the living room and settle onto the couch like she had already decided how the next few days would go. My aunt followed already, pulling out her phone to show my mother something. I stayed in the doorway a moment longer, feeling the weight of the unread thread still sitting in my pocket. Over the next 2 days, the pattern held. They were perfectly pleasant when Jason was in the room. They asked about his work, laughed at his stories, and told me how lucky I was to have such a steady husband. The moment he stepped out to run an errand or take a call, the tone shifted, small comments, little adjustments to the story of my life. At breakfast on the second morning, my aunt mentioned a cousin who had just bought a house, bigger than this one, I think. But you know how it is? Some people need the space to show off. My mother stirred her coffee. Amanda doesn't need all that. She's happy with her little projects and her quiet life here. Aren't you, honey? I took a sip of my own coffee and let the bitterness settle behind my ribs. Quiet life, little projects. They said it like they were doing me a favor by keeping my expectations low. I did not argue. I had learned a long time ago that arguing only gave them more material for the next private thread. Instead, I smiled the small, careful smile I had perfected over years of this and changed the subject to the neighborhood block party happening that evening. Everyone on the street was bringing a dish. It was supposed to be casual, friendly, the kind of thing that made this neighborhood feel like home. My mother brightened. Oh, that sounds lovely. We can all go together. It will be nice for people to meet the family. I should have known then that she would not be able to resist turning the evening into another stage. The block party started at 6. Folding tables lined the street under strings of lights someone had hung between the trees. Kids ran between the yards. Neighbors I knew by name waved and called out hellos. I brought a pasta salad I had made that morning. My mother and aunt walked beside me, commenting on the houses we passed. When we reached the main table, my mother stopped to talk with two women I recognized from the neighborhood association. I heard her before I saw the expression on their faces. Oh, Amanda does a little work from home? She was saying, her voice warm and dismissive at the same time. She has her little projects. It keeps her out of trouble. You know how it is with girls who get ideas in their heads. We're just glad she's settled here with Jason. He's the steady one. One of the women glanced at me with a polite, slightly confused smile. The other nodded, like she understood something important about me that I had not known myself. I felt the heat rise in my face, but I did not move. I stood there holding the bowl of pasta salad while my mother finished explaining my life to strangers in that soft, reasonable tone she had perfected. Every word was chosen to sound caring. Every word landed like a small, deliberate cut. My aunt stood next to her, nodding along, adding her own quiet agreement when my mother paused. She's always been the sensitive one in the family. We try not to make too much of a fuss over things. It only encourages her. I looked past them at the string lights swaying in the evening breeze. For a moment, the whole street felt very far away. The quiet strength I had carried for years felt thinner than usual, stretched tight over the hidden pain that had just been dragged out into the open again. I set the bowl down on the table without saying anything and walked a few steps away toward the edge of the yard where the light was softer. My hands were shaking just slightly. I folded them together so no one would see. This was how it always went. They smiled at the table, hosted the visit, accepted the hospitality, and then made sure anyone who might respect me a little too much heard the corrected version. And I had kept letting it happen because I thought if I gave enough, hosted enough, helped enough, the story would eventually include the truth. It never would, not as long as I kept playing by their rules. I stayed at the edge of the gathering a little longer, listening to the sound of neighbors laughing and kids shouting, feeling the first real crack in the careful wall I had built around the part of me that still wanted them to see me clearly. The crack was small, but it was there, and for the first time in a long time, I did not immediately reach for the tape to patch it over. I took a slow breath and turned back toward the tables because walking away completely would have given them exactly the scene they wanted. The string lights swayed overhead and neighbors kept laughing and passing plates like nothing had shifted. I picked up the empty serving spoon I had left behind and carried it to the dish bin, keeping my face neutral while the words my mother had just spoken to those two women replayed in my head on a loop. She had called my work little projects. She had called the recognition I had earned cute. She had done it with that soft, concerned tone that made everyone around her nod like she was the reasonable one looking out for her fragile daughter. My aunt had stood right beside her, nodding along, adding her own little adjustments to the story. It was deliberate. It always had been. Rebecca Lang from 2 houses down walked over with a plate of brownies and a kind smile that did not quite reach her eyes. She had seen enough of the exchange to understand the shape of it. "You okay?" she asked quietly, keeping her voice low so it would not carry. "Your mom seems protective." I gave her the small, practiced smile I had used for years. She means well. She just likes to keep things in perspective. Rebecca did not push. She just nodded once, set the brownies down, and stayed near me for the rest of the evening like a quiet buffer. I appreciated it more than I could say out loud. It was the first time in a long time someone outside the family had noticed the pattern without me having to explain it. When we finally walked back to the house that night, my mother and my aunt were still chatting about how nice everyone had been and how sweet the neighborhood was. They did not mention what my mother had said at the table. They never did. The damage was already done, and they could go to sleep believing they had simply been honest. Jason sensed something was off the moment we were alone in our bedroom. He did not ask directly, he just pulled me into a hug and said, "You were quiet out there tonight." "I'm fine," I told him. The lie came easily. It had to, just tired from hosting. He accepted it because I had trained him to accept it. I had spent years making sure my pain stayed small enough that it would not inconvenience anyone, especially not the people who were causing it. The next morning, the house felt heavier. My mother made coffee like she lived there and commented on how I kept the mugs in the wrong cabinet. My aunt sat at the kitchen island scrolling on her phone, occasionally showing my mother something and laughing softly. I moved around them, making breakfast, answering their questions about the neighborhood and Jason's job, playing the role of the good daughter who hosted and smiled and did not make a fuss. Around mid-morning, my aunt's phone buzzed with a notification. She glanced at it, frowned, and tapped something quickly. A second later, my own phone lit up on the counter. It was another text thread. This time it had been forwarded directly to me by accident. She had been trying to send a photo from the block party to the family group chat and had hit the wrong conversation instead. The thread that popped up was the one between her and my mother from the night before, right after we had come home. My mother had written, she got that look on her face again when I mentioned the project. Always so sensitive. I told the neighbors it was just a little thing she does to stay busy. No need to make it sound like some big achievement. She'll only get disappointed later. My aunt had replied, "Good. Keeps her grounded. Remember how she acted after that work thing last year? We don't need a repeat of that drama. Better to downplay it now, so she doesn't expect too much from us." There were more messages. They talked about how I had always needed to be the center of attention and how it was exhausting to keep managing my expectations. They laughed about how I still tried so hard to impress them, even though they had decided years ago that my successes were never going to be real enough to celebrate. I stood at the counter staring at the screen while the coffee maker hissed behind me. The sarcasm rose up sharp and automatic in my chest. Of course they had done this. Of course they had waited until I was out of the room to rewrite the entire evening into proof that I was the problem. It was almost impressive how consistent they were. My aunt realized what she had done a moment later. She looked up from her phone, saw my face, and went very still. "That wasn't... I didn't mean to send that to you," she said quickly. Her voice was tight. "It was just between us. You know how your mother worries." My mother turned from the stove, spatula still in her hand, and glanced between us. She did not look guilty. She looked annoyed that the careful performance had slipped. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I simply set my phone down on the counter and looked at both of them with the quiet steadiness I had learned to wear like armor. "You didn't mean for me to see it?" I said, but I did. The silence that followed was thick. My aunt opened her mouth like she might try to explain it away, then closed it again. My mother set the spatula down with a small clink against the pan. "You're reading too much into a private conversation," my mother said finally. Her tone was the same soft, reasonable one she had used at the block party. "We were just talking. Families talk. It doesn't mean anything." I felt the crack inside me widen a little more. Not into something dramatic, just wider. Clearer. I turned and walked out of the kitchen without answering. I did not slam the door. I did not need to. The quiet was louder than anything I could have shouted. Upstairs in the small room I used as an office, I sat on the edge of the old desk chair and tried to breathe. My hands were steady, but my chest felt tight in a way that had nothing to do with anger and everything to do with the long, slow realization that I had been trying to buy something that was never for sale. I reached for the bottom drawer without really thinking, the one that held old papers and random keepsakes I had never gotten around to sorting. My fingers brushed against a yellowed envelope I did not remember putting there. The handwriting on the front was my grandmother's, careful and looping. It was addressed to me, dated almost 10 years earlier, right after I had started my first real job out of college. I pulled it out and opened it. The letter inside was short. My grandmother had written about how proud she was of the work I was doing, how she hoped I would keep building things that mattered to me even when other people tried to make them smaller. Then she had added one line that made the breath catch in my throat now, reading it all these years later. Some people in this family have always needed to keep the story about themselves. Do not let them write yours for you. You are allowed to take up space without apologizing for it. I read the letter twice. The words sat differently now than they would have 10 years ago. Back then, I had tucked it away and kept trying anyway, kept hosting, kept helping, kept believing that if I sacrificed enough of my own peace, they would eventually see me the way my grandmother had. The forwarded chat was still open on my phone on the desk. The letter was in my hands. Both of them told the same story from different angles. One was recent and vicious. One was old and gentle. Together they made something undeniable. Downstairs, I could hear my mother and my aunt talking in low voices. They were probably already rewriting this moment too, deciding how they would explain it to the rest of the family later. I stayed where I was holding the letter, feeling the weight of every time I had chosen their comfort over my own clarity. The crack inside me did not close, it simply stopped feeling like something I needed to hide. The house was quiet when I finally came back downstairs. My mother and my aunt were still in the kitchen, but the easy chatter from earlier had stopped. They looked up when I walked in, and I could see the calculation already happening behind their eyes. My mother's face settled into that familiar expression of patient concern. My aunt's mouth tightened for just a second before she forced a small smile. I set the old letter on the counter between us. I did not raise my voice. I did not need to. I saw the thread you accidentally sent me, I said, and I found this letter from Grandma while I was upstairs. It's funny how two different pieces of paper from 10 years apart can say the exact same thing. My mother glanced at the yellowed envelope but did not pick it up. You're upset, I can see that. But reading private messages between your aunt and me is not how we handle things in this family. We talk things out like adults. The sarcasm rose sharp and automatic in my chest. Of course she would frame it as me doing something wrong. Of course she would turn the evidence of their own words into proof that I was the one crossing a line. I didn't go looking for it, I said. You forwarded it to me by mistake. And the letter was in a drawer I've had for years. I just never read it the way I needed to until today. My aunt shifted on her stool. Families vent sometimes. It doesn't mean we don't care about you. You know how your mother worries. She just wants you to stay realistic about what you can actually handle. I looked at her for a long moment. The neighbor, Rebecca Lang, had seen through the performance at the block party in 5 minutes. These two women who had known me my entire life still needed me to believe their version of me was the only one that existed. I've been realistic for a long time, I said. My voice stayed even, but the bitterness sat just under it. I've been realistic about hosting visits even when I knew how they usually ended. I've been realistic about helping when things were tight, and then hearing later that I was probably just showing off. I've been realistic about smiling through every little comment that turned my work into something small and silly, so nobody would expect too much from me. I'm done being realistic if it only ever protects the story you want to tell. My mother's expression shifted. The concern cracked just enough to show the irritation underneath. This is exactly what I mean. You take everything so personally. We were having a private conversation. You're making it into some big betrayal because that's what you do. You've always needed to be the victim. The words landed exactly as she intended them to. I felt the old reflex rise up, the one that wanted to explain, to soften, to make it easier for them to stay comfortable. I let it pass without acting on it. I'm not asking you to change how you see me, I said. I'm telling you that I see it clearly now, and I'm not going to keep pretending the visits and the help and the hosting are going to make any difference. They never have. My aunt tried one more time. You're blowing this out of proportion. We came here to spend time together. If you're going to turn every little thing into a fight, maybe we should just go home early. There it was, the natural consequence unfolding without me having to force it. They had spent years making sure I understood that my place was to absorb, to host, to keep the peace. The moment I stopped absorbing the visit became inconvenient for them. I nodded once. That might be best. My mother stared at me like she was waiting for the part where I backed down and apologized for making things awkward. When it did not come, she stood up and smoothed her shirt with sharp, precise movements. "We'll pack our things," she said. Her voice had lost the soft edge. "I hope you'll think about what you're doing here. Family doesn't just cut people off because of one forwarded text." I did not answer. There was nothing left to say that would land. They went upstairs to gather their bags. I stayed in the kitchen listening to the muffled sounds of drawers opening and zippers closing. Jason came home from running errands while they were still packing. He took one look at my face and did not ask questions. He simply went upstairs with them and helped carry the bags to the car when they were ready. They left without another real conversation. My mother gave me a brief, stiff hug at the door that felt like a performance for the neighbors who might be watching. My aunt did not hug me at all. The car pulled away from the curb and the quiet neighborhood settled back into its usual rhythm. No one on the street knew that anything significant had just ended. I stood on the porch for a long time after they were gone. The emotional weight I had been carrying for years did not lift all at once. It cracked further, then broke in stages. Later that evening, after Jason had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with the letter and the saved screenshots of both text threads. The tears came then, not loud or dramatic, just steady and private. I let them fall while I read my grandmother's words again and let myself feel every year I had spent trying to purchase something that had never been available for sale. The lesson sat in the quiet with me. You cannot buy love through sacrifice when the people on the other side have already decided your worth is fixed and small. Every extra effort, every hosted visit, every time I swallowed the sarcasm and the pain to keep the peace had only confirmed their story. The only thing that had ever changed the equation was when I stopped participating in it. My phone buzzed on the table. It was a message from my distant cousin Emily. We had not spoken much in years, but she had been copied on some of the family threads over time. Her text was simple and direct. I saw some of the messages that got forwarded around last week. I've had screenshots for a while of the things your mom has been saying to other relatives about your work and your life. I didn't know if you wanted them. But after what happened with the visit, I figured you should have them. Let me know. She attached several images. They were exactly what I expected and somehow still worse than I had imagined. Years of the same pattern told to aunts and uncles and cousins I barely saw anymore. My successes reduced to luck or exaggeration. My boundaries called drama. My quiet life framed as proof that I could not handle anything real. I saved the images without replying right away. The confirmation did not shock me, it simply completed the picture. The campaign had never been private, it had just been quiet enough that I could keep pretending I did not see it. The next morning, I woke up with the same quiet strength I had carried for years, except now it did not feel like armor I was wearing for someone else's comfort. It felt like something that belonged to me. I made coffee and sat at the table with Jason. I told him what had happened, what I had decided, and what the new boundaries would look like. No more open-ended visits. No more assuming I would host or help without clear terms. Limited contact that protected my peace instead of their stories. He listened without trying to soften it or fix it. When I finished, he simply said, "Whatever you need. I've got you." The loss was real. There would be no more casual family get-togethers that felt easy or warm. Holidays would be different. Phone calls would be shorter and more careful. The version of family I had kept trying to earn was gone. In its place was something smaller, quieter, and entirely mine. I did not feel triumphant. I felt clear. The crack inside me had widened into space. I could finally breathe in. Choosing myself had cost the easy version of family I had protected for so long. It had also given me back the parts of myself I had been editing down to keep them comfortable. That was the only trade I was willing to make anymore. Thank you for listening to my story. If you have ever realized that the people who should have been your safest place were the ones quietly rewriting your life to keep you small, I hope this one gave you something to hold on to. You're allowed to stop auditioning for love that was never going to be offered on your terms. If this resonated with you, type boundaries in the comments.